All right, everybody, welcome to Theory Underground. What you're about to hear is a conversation that took place on September 18th, where Nance and I, during an MSTU, Epic Marathon stream at Theory Underground, brought on a couple of left friends that are left. They are both leftist, but also on the left or of the left, but also we could say that they are left in the sense that they're left in our lives. They're still left in our lives. The lefties left in our lives. A number that dwindles all the time because a lot of lefties can't stand to have conversations with people who are interested in similar things, but at the end of the day hold different assumptions or conceptions or even priorities in some cases. But what I think keeps us all in dialogue is that Tony and Eamon are both fundamentally interested in understanding different perspectives, and they don't think that any one person or group or party or organization or anything like that has the solution. And so, that's a good starting point. And we've had a lot of great conversations over the years. And I'm really happy that we got to bring them both back on and together like this. I think it's an interesting conversation. And there's a lot to be learned here. So we talk about the American Revolution from this sort of left perspective. And then also get into this whole potential debate between Chris Catrone and Gabriel Rockhill. That's a debate that a lot of people have been asking for. I'm not so sure it's going to happen. I would like to bring Rockhill on for conversation to get to know him and to let him sort of lay his perspective out. But for the time being, because I've had Catrone and Žižek on this channel, Rockhill says he does not want to come on. So, hopefully other people who have been rooting for this conversation, maybe you can convince him, but I'm down. I'm down because I think that it could be productive. I think there could be a lot to be learned. But basically, Rockhill's position is he only wants to have conversations that will advance the left. And I said to him, well, I am all about having conversations for truth, for the sake of truth. And if in some cases that's not going to advance the left or whatever, that's personally not my main goal. I'm more interested in trying to understand. And this is a place for workers with earbuds who are just trying to understand. So, I say all of that up front here because it serves as a kind of disclaimer as well for people coming from the Swoletariat or One Dime. I want you guys just to remember, if you get involved with Theory Underground, don't get involved with it assuming that I agree with Tony and Eamon. I keep them around for the productive disagreements. And that's the first part of it. The other part of it is just that I like them at the level of their personalities. And if you don't, then get out of here. Get out. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you will enjoy this episode. Peace. And welcome, everybody, back to the MSTU Epic Live Stream Marathon, or Epic Marathon stream here at Theory Underground. We're joined right now by Eamon, a.k.a. the Swoletariat, and we will be joined by Tony of One Dime. And he said 10 minutes, 15 minutes late. It's going to be a little late for him. But I was saying, you know what? Maybe we could set a trap for him. I don't know. Hey, folks in the live chat, what do you think we should do? Is there some kind of a prank we could pull on Tony? I don't know. We'll teach him a lesson for showing up late.
Mm-hmm.
We could all speak French and just act like we're not. And just fuck with his head.
How good's your French?
It's not good enough to do.
Say that in French.
It would take me like a minute to figure out the words and then say it. I'm slow. I'm retarded. I'm en retard. But I can say that because I'm, yeah. We should wear funny hats.
And act like we're not. How about we all take our shirts? How about we all take our shirts off, and then it's weird if he doesn't. But then if he does, we all put our shirts back on instantly.
What are you doing, dude?
You're not a part of the Turbo team. Swole, how you doing, man? How's it going?
Things are good. I just decided to redo the bleached look again. Cut my hair. The wife is upset about it, but fuck her.
You look good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it just makes me think of, I don't know if you can hear this right now, but
in 5.
Oh, it's lame. It's not going to let me just do it.
Obi Trice, real name, no gimmicks.
Eminem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, I forgot he did shit with Obi Trice.
Round the outside.
Yeah, anyway.
What'd you have for
never
dinner?
Had the beard. See, this
Mom
is more
spaghetti?
This is more the Diplo look, or the Scott Steiner, maybe.
So I guess here's what I want to kind of start out with. You had a conversation with One Dime recently on your channel, like within the last year, right?
Yeah, like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, something like that.
Yeah. What did you guys talk about?
We talked about I had him on because he did a video on the American Revolution and how it was
right.
His thesis was, at the time, it was a bit of the progressive thesis, which is that the American Revolution was more of a counter revolution, and that America from the beginning was kind of set up as not fulfilling the kind of promises it had promised, really.
Sure.
Yeah. And anyway, so I had him come on to talk with James, I forget his name now, James something from Platypus, who's professor and historian on the American Revolution and British history in general.
Yeah, I saw something that James fellow had done actually, and I remember being interested in it because I wasn't really taking this line too serious. Well, I was taking it seriously, but I just wasn't really buying into this sort of anti-Americanism that it seems like the left in its burnout phase always turns to. And it's like you have this desperate student left that makes itself absolutely unpalatable to most people, makes itself absolutely reprehensible to most people. And then when most people don't get on board with it, it just turns into, well, fuck America. Then it's like, okay, yeah. Oh. I mean, I get it. But also, do you know how you were already unlovable and reprehensible in your approach? Did you know that you're not helping that with this new approach? In fact, it makes me think that if anyone was going to control the economy, it sure as hell better not be you, because you have a very punitive streak and you just hate regular people. Like that's my approach. And then seeing that James Vaughn is his name, was doing this, the Fate of the American Revolution thing. I'll drop the link to that into the chat
really
for
good.
everybody. Yeah. Well, how did that go?
Well, it was, to be honest, Tony ended up mostly agreeing with a lot of what James had to say, although kind of his initial reaction was very much in disagreement. But as they talked, he kind of found he was agreeing with a lot more of it. And I think I would guess, if you were to ask him, he's changed his position. Although I think he still holds on to like a kernel of this idea that that the revolution was a bit of some elements of counter revolution in it as well, and that the American democracy isn't as progressive as kind of is stated otherwise by James Vaughn and Platypus and liberals in general.
And that would just be because One Dime's like, it's not a democracy, guys, stop it. It's just not. And also, even if it was, like, that's not the best thing. I mean, insofar as it's democracy, what that means is the end of history. It means no large-scale structural changes can ever go through because they'll just get rolled back by the next person who gets voted in. It's going to be this constant rotating chairs of left to right, left to right, left to right. and we'll go in circles here at the end of history instead of left being like, oh, let's correct a little bit from the right, but we have like some kind of an actual destination. The destination would be large scale structural change that actually brings time energetic institutions to everybody, frees people up, brings a universal basic goods program. But nope, that's not on the horizon. Nope, absolutely not. Right. And so is it that he is saying that America is inherently structured to oppose that kind of change?
Yeah, I mean, it's like similar to like the Noam Chomsky position. It's Noam, like Tony would now say that it was a progressive development, but that it was like consciously pulled back and hampered, right? Like they were like, no, we can't let this go too far, and that's basically his position.
Okay. And what's your position at the time of that conversation versus now?
Oh, I basically was. Well, the reason I had James Vaughn on was because I was just interested in having watched the Platypus series on the American Revolution. Like there's 8 episodes or so a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And I think I just emailed him out of the blue and asked if he wanted to come on. And so, I had a conversation with him. And, and before having seen the Platypus take on the American Revolution, I was kind of in the same camp as Tony of One Dime. And saw American Revolution as a progressive step, but one that was ultimately hampered by the founding fathers and held back and made it basically a democracy for the ruling class and the propertied people.
Speak of the devil. I believe we have him right now. He just popped in here, actually. So One Dime, if you can hear us, go ahead and turn your camera on when you're ready. If you can hear us, I don't know. Sometimes there's like that lag of setting up audio when you're still entering the call. I can't see because I've muted non-video participants. But basically, what we're talking about, I don't even know. I shouldn't recap what we're talking about. Nance, where have you been on this position? We'll just go with that for now.
I think I've been on both sides of the question, or maybe both sides of the answer. I think, and maybe now I think I would say, yeah, sure, a little bit of both. But I mean, there was a point in time when I was convinced that America was evil, and it was, explicitly designed to be evil. And then there was maybe a point in time when I thought, I believed what I learned in American public school history class, which obviously is untrue. But I think now I would say, yeah, sure. Porque no los dos, right?
Porque no los dos. What's that? What's that mean?
Like it's, why not both, right? Like,
okay.
Like it's a little bit of both. It's a Reese's chocolate cup, a little bit of peanut butter and a little bit of chocolate.
Yeah, I think James Vaughn's point, I think, on a lot of this, I'll just put it out there for everybody, is that what we think of as the maybe the lack or the things that they stalled out on in the beginning of the revolution and the Constitution was actually just them setting the table for the future kind of emancipation and freeing up society in general. Like they laid the table for it, and that you can't really judge them on how imperfect it was right at the beginning, because they were actually like consciously conscious of the fact that they couldn't fully realize it at that moment.
It was a movement. They had to get from A to B.
Yeah.
They couldn't just, yeah.
Okay, and with that, let's segue here. So, welcome. We've got Tony One Dime here. He's officially here, everybody. It's absolutely wonderful to have him. Hey, how you doing, Tony?
Bad for being late.
Yeah,
Just,
no worries.
Was waiting on a delivery, but yeah, I'm here. Happy to be here on Theory Underground. It's always a good time to talk to y'all.
Yeah, man. Good to have you
What
back.
are we talking about today?
Well, we were killing time, and so I started by asking Swole to kind of break down the conversation you all had like 6 to 8 months ago on his channel about James Vaughn of Platypus and his position on the American Revolution. And I was asking him what was his position and how has it changed. And then Nance just shared his own as well. And then I guess we don't have to kind of stay on that. We have some more general themes we want to get into, but ultimately this is kind of the way that we conceive this portion of the MSTU, the Epic Marathon stream, is that we're gonna have a chat. Like it's more of a hangout. It's a little less structured, and so we really could stay on the American Revolution. And I ultimately do want to get into the concept of revolution. But for those who don't know, this is Tony. Tony is in Underground Theory, as is Eamon, aka the Swoletariat. Tony does One Dime. Eamon does Swoletariat. Eamon's piece is about diet, health, and fitness, the dialectics thereof. And Tony is, he does this amazing piece on Mao's Cultural Revolution, on how it's hardly Mao's. It's a lot more anarchic than totalitarian. And he has a now I think sort of famous video essay to accompany that on his channel. He has very beautiful video essays. We might say the most beautiful essays. And so with that, Tony, how's that position for you developed when it comes to James Vaughn and just thinking about the role of the American Revolution, and what is your sort of principled position on it?
Well, I'm glad it's not that structured because, I'm feeling a little bit lobotomized today. So, coming in with like, I don't have much prepared, but that's an easy question for me to answer. I guess I should preface that, I run One Dime, the channel. Many of you probably are familiar, the viewers. The One Dime videos are a lot bigger than my podcasts, but I also do the podcast One Dime Radio, and I had James Vaughn on my podcast about like a month or two after I had that conversation with Swoletariat and James Vaughn. And I quite like James Vaughn. I think he brings a very valuable perspective that a lot of people on today's left would learn from. I do still have a disagreement with him, though. I think that James Vaughn, and this is actually a platypus tendency in general, they kind of are trying to they're trying to do a new historiography and also create a new grand narrative at the same time. And although they, purport to be dialectical thinkers, and I think mostly are, they sometimes have a kind of romantic depiction of the American Revolution and the bourgeois revolution as a whole. And I think some of that is necessary because today's left has kind of gone backwards with this post-colonial interpretation that wants to delegitimize all what the bourgeois revolution achieved and kind of weirdly pit the French Revolution and the American Revolution against each other as somehow like the French Revolution was good and base because they killed all those aristocrats. And the American Revolution was, just a bunch of slavers. I mean, that's just horseshit. Like, there would be no French Revolution without the American Revolution. And while the American Revolution kind of didn't achieve a lot of what it set out to do, like slavery, didn't get abolished, it got expanded. I mean, for the first time in history, people had to actually defend slavery because of the American Revolution. Like, people now had to defend it. They had to come up with all these reasons for like why you need it, because before it was seen as just something that had always existed. Like this liberal idea that everyone is equal. That's insanely radical. I mean, like for much of human history, peasants and aristocrats were seen as different human beings. So like, I think there's a lot there that could be learned from, and today's left overlooks that. However, James Vaughn and I think Catron does this too. They risk almost legitimizing the authority of the American regime in being a little too romantic about the American Revolution, particularly the Constitution. So where I would disagree with James Vaughn on is actually the U.S. Constitution. Because I still think the U.S. Constitution is what ended the American Revolution, not what fulfilled it. The U.S. Constitution was an attempt to kind of manage democracy. I believe the founding fathers were the founders of managed democracy. Now, that's not to like vilify them, because managed democracy is a radical progression from what had been existing before. I mean, Britain didn't even Britain was not a democracy whatsoever at that time. It was a liberal state, but it wasn't democratic at all. But the Constitution really restricted the scope of democracy, and also heavily put way more power in the hands of property owners, and kind of created a system that made it very hard to actually change the system in favor of a working majority. So, if you're going to support like a communist politics, like people at Platypus do, which is they want this radical transformation of society, no one's going to get on board with that if they think like the authority of the current regime is legitimate. And the way the American regime legitimizes itself, and by extension, the way that most liberal democracies legitimize themselves, is through popular sovereignty. Hey, you voted for us. Suck it. Like it doesn't matter how bad the conditions get. In dictatorships that purport to achieve stability, when they no longer do that, they tend to fall apart. Communist regimes, which legitimize themselves on the basis of we're going to advance to we're the dictatorship of the proletariat, and we're advancing socialism, which usually gets watered down to just mean living standards for the proletariat. When their economies stagnate and when they no longer really fulfill this goal, these regimes, weakened and lost their legitimacy and, were overthrown. I mean, I'm kind of oversimplifying here, but the point is the authority of the current regime is the fact that people consented to it and voted for it. So like you need to kind of really actually delegitimize US democracy to even make the advocacy of a better socialist democracy possible, And I know this is a little bit like jumping ahead of the gun, because that's one thing James said. He's like, that's a fair point, but that's jumping ahead of the gun to this situation. But still, like, I think no one will ever support revolution. No one should support revolution unless it's imposed, unless you have to. It's not a fun thing. Like, I don't think any of us would want revolution. I mean, like in theory, I'd rather, vote for representatives and try to get that way. There's less risk and all of that. But if you see like that as impossible, which most Marxists kind of do, I think it's more nuanced depending on the country and situation. In America, I think it's highly unlikely, to be honest. But you need to like poke a hole in the way the authority legitimizes itself. And I think James Vaughan risks doing the opposite, because of how, at least in the way he portrays the American Revolution as like so progressive, and not so much that I don't have an issue with. It's more that he thinks the Constitution was the fulfillment of the revolution as opposed to its undoing. And that's something I disagree with. I would agree more with like, other thinkers like Sheldon Wallen, who see the Constitution as sort of what kind of was what ended like the radicality of the American Revolution. So yeah.
All right, that's fascinating. I have several things that I want to riff off of with that. There's like several directions I kind of want to dive into, but before I hog all the space and steer this ship, I do want to give you guys a chance to respond. What do you guys think? American Revolution stopped at the Constitution. Anything else you'd like to add?
I would just say that everybody here interested in this topic should go watch the 3 streams with James Vaughan, the one with Tony one-on-one, the one with me one-on-one, and the one with all 3 of us, 2 on my channel, 1 on his on One Dime Radio. But yeah, I do want to say that the legitimacy of the American state, I don't think that's what he's risking. I don't think that's the problem, because Platypus will, is not afraid of talking about the problems with the American state today and in general, really. But it's more a question of like revitalizing the call for the original radicalism of the revolution, and showing how that that promise hasn't been fulfilled. Let's fulfill it through socialism.
Okay. Nance, got anything on that?
I don't know. I think I don't like to think about revolution because like Tony said, revolution is a horrible thing. I mean, look at what's happening in the world right now. There are multiple places where there's like horrible violence, and that's what revolution looks like. And none of us want that smoke. But I also agree that something needs to happen. Something needs to change. And it's easier for me to just not think about this shit at all. Like there's a million other things I would rather think about. I would rather, just sit back, read Marx, disconnected from the troubles of the world. So I don't know. I guess I'm excited or looking forward to like having my feet put to the fire on that, because it should be thought about. I guess we do need to think about it. Yeah.
Somebody needs to think about it. I don't know that we need to think about it, but you guys thinking about it for us is interesting enough. And so we'll happily sort of use you guys like our own little, I don't know, like roosters, put you in a little ring and have you fight it out. We'll just kind of sit there and place our bets and it's illegal to do real cockfights. So we'll just simulate them by having you guys run the rounds. But on the note of not debates, but contradictions, something that we like to do at Theory Underground. A contradiction is a contradiction conversation. It's meant to, instead of a side being the one that wins at the end of the thing, the only person who really can win in a contradiction is the audience member who doesn't have an opinion made up already, the person who's thinking things through for themselves. And that's what the contradiction is supposed to prioritize. We could be more abstract and say it's to advance the discourse, but we don't want to be abstract. We're just going to say for workers with earbuds who are not made up in their mind, trying to figure things out, hearing people of different positions talk stuff through is interesting. For instance, I'd love to pick your guys' brains on something that I find out you guys disagree on someday. I would love that. And not in a combative way, like a real cockfight, but no, just like a straight up, like, please educate us on why you hold this position and why you think it matters. What are the stakes? And so to that end, you guys brought up Catrone and Platypus, obviously. Catrone is going to be our keynote guest for today. He's doing a double feature like Todd did last time. And it's going to be on why Gabriel Rockhill is wrong about Stalin, the Frankfurt School, and the CIA. And then also the other segment will be Marxism. What is it? And Mikey's going to join me and Nance, and we're just going to ask him questions. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. But on this Rockhill note, I know that we've got a couple people who love to hate watch Theory Underground who have come over from the Rockhill side of the internet because if you say his name 3 times, some of his people show up. And, Catrone has said his name at least 3 times. So has Slavoj Žižek. And so obviously he comes and he peeks in, or his people do at least. And I've talked to him one-on-one. We've had some engagement with one another, where I was just like, I'd love to bring you on, hear your side of the, situation and your approach to things. But the reason this matters is because both Žižek and Catrone, 2 brands of Marxist or post-Marxist, have kind of taken their shots at Rockhill. Rockhill, his people come over and are just like, oh, this is a bunch of bullshit, and we're on the side of Rockhill. And then I look at Rockhill when he's talking, and I hear a lot of things that sound like they make a lot of sense. He's an attractive-looking, smooth-talking, sort of historical, political philosophy kind of guy, right? And in a lot of ways, he is the opposite of us, right? He's against the CIA. We are the CIA. He's a Marxist. We're post-Marxists. He's a part of the left. We don't know what that means anymore, right? There's all these things, but you two are leftists. You two have sort of principled positions. We can kind of start stirring the pot in a sort of sense. I'm curious what you both think would be the main actual contradictions between Gabriel Rockhill and Chris Catrone if we really were to distill it down to fundamentals. Yo, what's up, listener? Or viewer.
Yo.
How you doing?
So I noticed you sitting there watching this video.
Yep. we see
And
you.
yeah, you're listening, you're paying attention. You're definitely not hearing everything we're saying though.
Yep. Nope. Definitely not. You're not taking notes.
Yeah, take notes, dude. What are you doing?
Hey, you know what? If you want to if you want to be passive and just enjoy this content while multitasking, that's what we do as well. Everyone does that most of the time. We very rarely switch into this more active mode, and that's fine. That's fine because you're kind of absorbing this content as you go through your life, and that's great. But if you're going to do that, then we just have a little request of you. What's our little request, Nance?
We want you to do the algorithm things. We want you to hit the button, the thumbs up, or the thumbs down. Hit the subscribe button. You could even hit the bell so you get notified when there's an epic marathon stream.
Yep.
Or one of the dope ass interviews. We just finished a dope ass interview. But do the things to help train your algorithm to actually give you content that you prefer. And at least here we are aware of the problem. We are aware that we're all infected with the algorithm, and we're trying to do something about it. So while you can like maintain a cynical distance of like not being an enthusiastic vocal supporter,
Right.
doing those actions actually, first of all, it helps the channel, it helps Theory Underground, but it helps your algorithm too. You will get less kind of shitty clickbait React content if you train your algorithm to give you what you prefer. I mean, you're already here. You're already watching this.
Yeah.
How,
And so enthusiastic, unironic, genuine support might be a little too much for some of you who are way too cool for that kind of thing. But you can at least hit the little like button, and then we'll say we're even, okay?
There we go. You owe us nothing now.
Yeah, let's get back to it. And would that be a waste of time to have that conversation, or do you think it'll be cool?
I don't know enough about Gabriel Rockhill. I literally encountered him like a couple months ago on a YouTube channel. I started listening to him and be like, oh, this guy's smart. I'm agreeing. And then the more I listen, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is a Stalinist. And then I remember just like rage commenting in the whatever YouTube video it was. I'm just like, this is wrong. That's wrong. And that was the extent of my knowledge of him. So I would only be able to critique him as kind of a general Stalinist.
Okay.
I wrote a long critique of Gabriel Rockhill on Twitter a while ago that I was gonna make into a article on Cosmonaut, but never really when it came around to it because I didn't think it was worth the time. And I also want to have him on my pod at some point. A lot of people have requested Gabriel Rockhill come on my pod, and on that Twitter thread that I mentioned, I actually suggested that he should debate Chris Catrone, like have a conversation with Chris Catrone.
100%.
And he never responded to any of that. And I think, it would be great if you guys hosted that, like a discussion between Catrone and Rockhill, because I can maybe sum up my critique of Rockhill. And before I say what it is, I want to preface that I think he is like an intellectual. I don't want to like make what I'm about to say seem like I'm saying he's an idiot or something.
Right.
He's not an idiot. But look, I think Gabriel Rockhill's whole beef with the Frankfurt School and Western Marxism more broadly is sort of a projection of his own disenchantment with academia. Like what we're really witnessing with Gabriel Rockhill is his own utter psychological break with Western academia, because like if you look at his history, he spent a lot of time studying all the people he criticizes. So he did his dissertation on Rancière. I think he studied it with Alain Badiou. He never shit talks Alain Badiou because I can kind of see why, because Alain Badiou is one of the few who's still like communist. But he spent a lot of time studying these French theory academics. Less so the Frankfurt School, but a lot of French theory. And when you spend your whole life doing that, and maybe you think, oh, wow, this doesn't actually amount to much. Like it's not really doing much politically. You might just have a break psychologically and think, fuck these guys. I wasted my whole life. And you kind of project that into like a broader political argument, because he seems to, if you look at the way he talks about these people, there's a bitterness. There's something like he almost has a beef with them. It's like he's fighting his own psychological battle. So I don't really take what he says too deeply, because frankly, I think Rockhill, these are a bunch of dead academics. Like, why do you think this is such a big deal? Like, he spends all this time making this point about the Frankfurt School being backed by CIA or whatever, and all these intellectuals, and he makes it seem as though like these thinkers are what led to the impotent left that exists today.
Right.
When in reality, very few people actually read these thinkers. Like he very much exaggerates the influence that they have. And this is the second point about Rockhill. He also kind of builds up an implicit coping narrative about left history. And he's not the only one to do this. This is common among a lot of leftists, especially the Marxist Leninists. You might say Stalinist Swoletariat, right?
I might.
But I don't know if he would be a Stalinist. In my opinion, he's kind of like a regimer, like one of these people who sees modern China and Cuba and all like the existing like left-wing governments as this sort of last beacon of hope against American Western capitalism, even though all of these states except arguably Cuba are capitalist, But okay, so Rockhill, in his depiction of like this Western left and how it's been polluted by all these academics, he implicitly kind of says that, well, if it wasn't for all of this Western leftism, if it wasn't for these thinkers who he thinks created the new left and led to what exists today, that there would have been this real communist left. Because this is implicit in all of his articles on the Frankfurt School. He thinks that they backed this, the CIA backed these people because they wanted to create a compatible left. Right. And there's some truth in that. There was an effort to create a compatible left. He's not crazy in saying that. However, in emphasizing this so much, he kind of implies that there would have been a non-compatible left to begin with. And in the case of America, that is simply not the case. Like in France, it's the case. In Italy, it certainly was the case. But in Italy, Italy never really was influenced by like new leftism in that same way. Italy is a much more complex scenario. And Italy, Italy had a communist movement, a very big one, that almost succeeded at multiple moments. Why it didn't is a very complex story, which I don't have all the answers to, and I would like to study more. But Gabriel Rockhill doesn't deal with any of that. Gabriel Rockhill doesn't deal with any of the cases in which the left actually existed and failed. He doesn't deal with why the Soviet Union failed. He doesn't deal with why the Italian left failed. And he barely even really deals with why the French left failed. Like he talks about the compatible left, about how there was this attempt to build a democratic socialist left instead of a communist left. Well, he doesn't really explain why it was the communists in France, the Communist Party, who compromised with de Gaulle and pretty much agreed to be the controlled opposition. They got a lot of successful reforms for workers passed by doing that. It's not to take that away, but they pretty much like sold out they gave up on the dream of revolution or taking power they totally gave up on that. He doesn't also deal with the fact that so many communist parties around the world were pretty much subject to the authority of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union did not want to back revolution in Europe or Latin America. He doesn't deal with that, but he thinks that if it wasn't for this Western left in America, he focuses a lot on America, you would have had this radical communist left. Where did that ever exist? The radical communist left in America pretty much died out after the New Deal. There was, and after Taft-Hartley Act, even socialist unions were pretty much dead. So what is this fantasy in his head that he's creating? The reality was the new left was actually kind of a radical left shift from what was kind of a left emerged in which a left didn't really exist for quite a while. Left was dead after the post-war period, in America at least. Now, it might have not been the left he wanted, and it was certainly a left filled with problems, some of which permeate to this day, I'm all for critiquing the new left. I'm all for it. Like, there's many critiques to be had. But like Rockhill, he just thinks that there would have been this Marxist, Leninist, communist left if it wasn't for this boogeyman. And I think that's just a fantasy that doesn't deal with the problems of why this left he kind of is much less critical of, the Marxist, Leninist left, why that failed when they did take power.
Yeah.
He's doing a Jordan Peterson, James Lindsay version of left history, but from the left.
Right. It's the Adorno and Horkheimer created identity politics in their cultural turn. Right. And identity politics is the reason we don't get to have nice things. If it wasn't for Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer developing critical theory, identity politics wouldn't have come around, and it wouldn't be the thing that hijacks any sort of broad-based working class movement. Right? Is that accurate? Okay. So
yeah, he calls this the global theory industry. Like he says like all this is part of a global theory industry, which is an attempt to kind of de-radicalize the left. And I'm thinking like, this is what academia is. Like, what do you expect academia to be? These are armchair intellectuals. Like, he's kind of penalizing them for not being communist activists, but activists, revolutionaries, activists, and intellectuals are not the same thing. That was never the case. So it's like he's projecting his own values. Like, why weren't you radical enough? And what's weird is he kind of is more warm about Marcuse. He doesn't quite like Marcuse either, but he's more sympathetic to him because he's like, at least he tried, at least he did something, instead of Adorno, who is like, a party pooper or whatever, and didn't like go to the protests. And it's like, fair enough, but I mean, this is I don't know, it's like not a very good criticism. He's just saying like, why weren't you like how I want you to be? That's what his criticism boils down to. Why didn't you support the thing I wanted you to support? And it's weird, out of all things to criticize the left for is not supporting the Soviet Union. That's one of his reoccurring criticisms. They didn't support the Soviet Union. It's like, you realize that you would have got deported if you supported the Soviet Union in the Red Scare, Cold War era. Like, you would have to be like retarded to openly support the Soviet Union at this time, because you could get deported.
Like
That was a real threat.
literally Emma Goldman was. She was literally put into a boxcar, shipped to a plane, flown to Finland, put into another boxcar, and she couldn't see the light of day until she arrived in the Soviet Union. So it's like that happened. You know what I mean? Like, that was the situation. You talk, you get deported. That's why we say we pledge allegiance to the flag. Hail America. We're on the side of the CIA. Absolutely 100%. We are in their lobby. This is the internet. They invented it. We're in their front lobby right now. We're not, there's no pretenses here. We're good boys. We're just asking innocent questions and doing our own research. We're not edgy at all. And it feels to me like Rockhillians and anyone who's like super in their Lizardo sort of, okay, I'll say something about that. But the people who are coming from that side, like, they kind of think, to me, it feels like kind of when I'm talking to family members who think that it's all about voting blue no matter who, or voting for the Republicans because they're the lesser evil on this or that issue right now. It's like, yeah, I've got people like that, tons of them on both sides in my life. And then there's these people who are like, no, neither of those things are right. We have to push the left. We just have to be against identity politics and be for the third world and organizing the workers and be anti-imperialist. And by doing that, it's like, by taking on these anti-American positions, they're acting like how both sides of my family act often about voting. You know, by expressing anti-patriotic sentiments, that's some kind of a sufficient condition for whatever it is. And to me, it feels unconvincing. But I said I'd say something about the Lizardo connection. Yo, what's up, Mandy? Great to see you in the chat. I know that Mandy has spent some time between Theory Underground and a lot of other channels, and I think that she's actually she likes Tut and Rockhill and the stuff that they do. And but actually hit me up and said it was okay if I talk about this on stream. Like, she hit me up like 2.5 months ago, and she's like, "What are they talking about when they say the movement? They keep acting like there's a real movement, like it's actually existing, like there's people who just need to get on board and or get out of the way. When, like, what are they talking about? Just like resurrecting communism?" She's like, "It sounds like they're talking about just resurrecting like Soviet era Stalinist communism." That's what it sounds like. It's what she was deducing based off of, 10 plus hours of listening to them. And I was like, no, I do think that they are implicated in the nicest way possible. And I look forward to having these conversations, but I think that they are implicated whenever Nance in the last year and I have said, it seems like there's a lot of influencers out here, kind of hope salesmen, essentially telling people, hey guys, if we could just convince enough people that we interpreted history wrong, then the left would be back. And then we'd have the large-scale structural change that we want. And we're over here saying, yeah, we want the large-scale structural change. We're not sure that arguing with people about their interpretations of history at this sort of level, whether it's on the internet or knocking door to door or whatever, is going to be the change. Commercial break. TUCon 2024 happening October 24th through 27th. It's 4 days of brain overstimulation. That's right. We're going to be talking about sci-fi philosophy, human futures, critical media theory, the question of post-politics, like all of it, psychoanalysis, phenomenology, structuralism, all of these various approaches. We're going to be getting into it. We're going to get in the deep end. If you're curious, if you want to attend, if you live in Boise, that's good for you. If you want to travel here, well, you can come. But if you would like to just join virtually, you will be able to attend it via Zoom. That's right. Register today. Thank you, and hope to see you there at TUCon.
Tight, yeah!
So the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to you guys is Lizardo wrote a book that Nance and I had a great time reading. I've failed to post that every day since we did it like a year ago. I mean to post it. It's like a 9-hour reading of or it might be 7 hours of excerpts from Lizardo's book, Nietzsche, the Aristocratic Rebel. We think that it's really powerful. I definitely have to say hats off to Lizardo for making me think deeply about Nietzsche and his position on otium. And if it wasn't for Tut, I don't know that I would have I was already looking into it, but Tut kind of accelerated that. Okay, all of that's just to say, Lizardo, that's all he was to me, was this guy who was saying, actually, Nietzsche does have a politics. He's expressly against most people having their time energy so that a handful of people can have their otium, which means active leisure time with no stress. Okay. And that's why he's this aristocratic rebel. He's not a standard conservative. He's a proto-reactionary, blah, blah, blah. It's a thing that you can watch, Matthew McManus get into when I had the conversation between him and Spencer Leonard. And so that's a thing. Where did you go, Tony? Let's see. Gotta fix that really quick. Okay. So with all that said, I hope you're back. All right. So with all of that said, so this is not automated, so I actually have to sit here and make the transitions if you go video off. But anyway, basically, Lizardo gets mad props from me and Nance when it comes to that work that he did. But then he also wrote a very popular book on Stalin. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a book that people pretty much pair with
Critique of the Black Legend.
And then they combine that with some Parenti, and then boom, they're good to go. They've got their Marxism, Leninism, Stalinist sort of approach. I had somebody in the chat say, ha ha ha, what's Stalinism? And another person was like, oh, so Rockhill's the devil now? So I can tell that I think we have a couple of fanboys in the chat. And so, welcome guys. Maybe we could have Tony and Eamon and Nance in their own ways address their positions on the Lizardo approach, if not the Parenti approach. And then we'll close this thing out because I know we've only got like another 13 minutes, though. Maybe we'll have some digital green room time. Just do it,
You guys
Eamon.
don't go first. I can go first. So I would distinguish those
Okay.
thinkers a little bit. Like, I want to
Okay.
say first, Parenti is not a Stalinist, and Parenti actually is very, very critical of Stalin and the Soviet Union in his book Black Shirts and Reds. He has a book called Communism and a chapter called Communism in Wonderland, which is a very good critique actually of the Soviet Union. And I wish a lot of these Parenti fanboys would read his own work because he's actually quite critical. And I would say, um, first off, what do we mean by Stalinism? So this, I'll actually wait till I explain that when Swoletariat is here, because I think we have a disagreement on what Stalinism is.
Oh no, I'm listening.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you have a different understanding of Stalinism. I take Stalinism very simply to just be the politics that existed under Stalin's rule and the people who sided with Stalin in the in that whole international context and the splits that occurred. So like, I think you would say Stalinism is essentially this idea of anti-revisionist Marxism-Leninism. So people who still carry on the legacy of Stalin believe that Soviet Union was fine and dandy. It was, progressing towards communism until Khrushchev uh, basically denounced Stalin and supposedly went on a revisionist road. Now, there's some people at the time who agreed with that and many people who didn't. The people who agreed with that were people like Enver Hoxha. If you were to give a perfect example of Stalinism outside of Stalin, outside of the Soviet Union, it would be Enver Hoxha's Albania. Hoxha is basically like the quintessential Stalinist. That's his politics. Some people say Mao, prior to the Cultural Revolution, was Stalinist. I would disagree. Mao is sort of a bit of an esoteric, sarcastic writer, and he critiques Stalin at many points, usually kind of implicitly when Stalin was alive, because Soviet Union had all the power at that point and could have easily had him killed. But he hated his guts, and basically after Stalin died, he was much more explicit in critiquing Stalin because he thought Stalin was kind of almost a social imperialist who wanted to enforce his authority, the USSR's authority on China, and made them do all sort of things which were bad ideas, like siding with the Kuomintang, which ended up in the Shanghai massacre. But that's a whole another event. If you want to see more on like what's like the difference between Maoism or Mao Zedong thought and Stalinism, you could probably check out my video Cultural Revolution, the Cultural Revolution videos, or the Theory Underground chapter I wrote. So Stalinism basically believe people who are Stalinists today are usually people who call themselves Marxism, Leninism, and say that they're anti-revisionists. So this is different. There's a big difference between just an ML who supports China and all actually existing socialist states. Stalinists today do not support China. They think like they're very hardcore about like any capitalist relations. They're against all of that. But they kind of think like the answer to preventing capitalist road is to just like kill all the revisionists and kill all the capitalist roaders, Some of them come out and say that. Some of them are implicit about it. But a lot of them come out and say it actually. If you look on Twitter, a lot of these Stalinists, they say basically that like, if the kulaks were like fully cleansed, and if you killed all the revisionists, you wouldn't have had Khrushchev and you wouldn't have had Gorbachev, etc. They have this very, frankly, pretty retarded view of like how to conduct their politics. Like their politics is based on whether people disagree with them. But this would be a different way in which Citron might use the word Stalinist, and how, by extension, Swoletariat would use the word Stalinist. I think, I'll let you guys explain your view on how you say it. But I do also want to preface, I don't think Lazurdo is a Stalinist either. Lazurdo is a fantastic scholar, but I do think he does do this like Soviet apologetics thing, which to some extent is necessary in clarifying the like exaggerations. Like the point of Critique of Black Legend, all he really says in that, to summarize, is he pretty much says like what happened in the Soviet Union was a complex result of like bureaucrats killing people, and just what happened is Stalin would get tons of names of people who were supposedly guilty, and Stalin would like just sign and often not really like read the list. And it was these bloodthirsty bureaucrat people who were actually often recruited from the ranks of the working class, who went and like would persecute people wrongly and stuff. he's basically saying shit's more complex than just Stalin. Stalin wasn't, you know, a supercomputer fucking telling everybody what to do. But my whole thing with that is like, okay, so all that means is like Soviet Union was fucked, not, and it wasn't just Stalin, right? So to me, like, yeah, Lazardo does engage in this kind of apologetic sometimes, like it's implicit, but he's scholarly fantastic. Like I would recommend I haven't read the Nietzsche Aristocratic Rebel book because that's so damn long, but I
Right.
read Liberalism, a Counter History, which is pretty good. And I also read his most recently translated work called Democracy or Bonapartism, which is fantastic. And he actually argues against some of like the far left attempts to dispense with representation. He actually thinks that if you dispense with representation, you kind of get like a Bonapartism. And he's like, that's a critique of Marxist Leninists right there. So I don't think he's like all that unnuanced. Some people, the problem with Lazardo is he gets a bad rep because all these MLs like to cite him just to support their own kind of grand narratives.
Okay.
But I think Lazardo is a great scholar. So yeah,
That's fascinating to me. Yeah. Okay. And I don't have time to properly respond to that with my questions and things that it provokes in me, but I want to give you each a chance to say some closing thoughts. Yeah, starting with Eamon.
So I don't know really anything about Lazardo. I do know a little bit about Parenti, because he was one of my first kind of internet influences for Marxism and just Soviet history and stuff. I like Parenti. Parenti is a Khrushchevite, though, and a Khrushchevite is kind of a derivative of Stalinism. In that he upholds, Marxist Leninist thought, but he's like, Stalin did it wrong. Stalin was bad. He was, they did it. They did Marxism Leninism. They did it dirty. And Khrushchev and Parenti's kind of tendency, or saying, we need a more pure version of that, I suppose. And Stalinism in general, like, yeah, I think it's not just, agreeing with Stalinist thought. It's a kind of a broader historical thing. I wrote a lot of notes for this thing, which we didn't get to, but I put Stalinism and Maoism as a derivative of Stalinism in the camp of the right, historically, because the right, their version of Marxism is conceived of nationally instead of internationally, and their politics effectively amount to class collaboration through anti-imperialism, supporting national liberation struggles, and petty bourgeois radicalism over keeping the horizon of international proletarian socialism and revolution. So in practice, like, despite the rhetoric, their horizon of possibility isn't actually socialism, just even though they talk about it. And in this sense, Stalinism is a crime, therefore, because it forecloses the possibilities before us.
yeah, I would disagree with that pretty strongly, just because I think when we have that definition of Stalinism, we risk watering it down into kind of like smear buzzword, which is what Stalinists often use to say, like, what does Stalinism even mean? It's not even real. It's so broad. I think to slump Khrushchev thought with Stalinism is pretty bizarre. I mean, like, look, all of them, I guess the point of like Catron saying that it's Stalinist is basically that it's not Marxist. It's not really like orthodox Marxist. And that I would agree with. But I mean,
It's an opportunist,
right deviation.
abandonment of the horizon of international socialism.
I would agree with that, right? But I just don't think the word Stalinism captures that at all. Like, I mean, Khrushchev is the guy who kind of denounced Stalinism. That's why Stalinists hate Khrushchev more than everybody.
People were denouncing the Soviet Union far before Khrushchev, though.
Yeah, but much more after,
Sure.
because, like, people didn't know about the gulags, like at that extent. People really did not know. It's something I tell people about Orwell 1984, actually, because 1984 wasn't at the time written really like much about the Soviet Union. It was about Nazi Germany, and it was trying to say how like Britain could become like Nazi Germany. It wasn't about the Soviet Union. That gets distorted because now there's all these like covers with Stalin in front of it. But at the time, people didn't really know how fucked shit was in the Soviet Union until Khrushchev leaks. So like that's why the Stalinists hate him so much. And I think to lump also Maoism and Stalinism, together is incorrect. I explained why already, in the paper, so I don't need to reiterate that. But like, I also think they're also, to view them as right deviationists is incorrect. I think you could write Stalin as a rightist to a certain extent, but I think Maoism is actually almost like an ultra left current.
Okay, guys.
Maoism and
I'm sorry. I hate to do this, but I have to cut it off right here. We are getting ready for Jay Reg, who did not sleep at all last night. And so, but before we bring him in, I want to say goodbye to you guys, and I want to give you a chance to go into the green room because we got started late. And the fact is you guys got interesting questions that you're getting into right now. Eamon knows how to record on OBS, and Will officially is here. I think he might be recording and emceeing this conversation in the back room. So go ahead and we'll see you guys and what you talk about shortly. But thank you for being here. And there's J. Rick. We're going to go talk to him. Thank you, Tony. Take care.
Hi.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks,
Who's
Will.
this guy?
Everybody, we'll be right back right after this.
I recognize this
It's
guy.
a theoretically correct title.
M Stews, the epic marathon streams at Theory Underground.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of letting others read and think on their behalf, slipstreaming our way into an understanding of a situation that short-circuits the deadlocks of our moment.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is coming to a city near you. What that has meant in the last year is traveling across the United States, into Canada, and then all over Europe to promote our books, courses, and ideas related to time energy and underground theory. You've been reading Underground Theory.
I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Okay, picture this scene. America, early 2021. An Amazon warehouse worker arises from the emerging underground theory internet scene to create spaces for untimely topics and concerns that are too often neglected or kept in isolation today. Joined by a revolving cast of underground theorists, academics, and critics, he establishes what will become Theory Underground, a teaching, research, and publishing platform by and for working class intellectuals, autodidacts, and academics who want to do more than they're able to do within the confines of academia. That warehouse worker's name is David McKerracher, and his book Timenergy is his first major contribution to the world of theory. It was recently reprinted with a foreword by none other than Slavoj Žižek, who also contributed to Theory Underground's latest book.
My Bible, it's an excellent book.
A collection of essays called Underground Theory.
What you just heard is an excerpt from the Strange Exiles podcast, episode 23, where Bram from Strange Exiles interviewed me and Mikey. For those who don't know, Mikey is the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. We are publishing one of his books here shortly at Theory Underground. He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer, and it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first I had to get freed from wage labor, which was achieved this year. That's right. Thanks to my monthly seminar subscribers, I was able to quit Amazon and do Theory Underground full time. Now I'm announcing the next big phase of the plan, which is the Mikey Down Seminar. What monthly subscribers to the Mikey Seminar are paying for is a survey of philosophy, including deep dives into Žižek, Land, Lacan, Baudrillard, Bataille, Lyotard, and ultimately the whole history of philosophy.
We're trying to build like this ongoing seminar, right? And that's what I really like about this thing, where, you know, if I'm teaching a main text That's something I got to focus on. I got to really, but the seminar thing, we can do this stuff all the time where we dive deeper into concepts, we dive deeper into certain, sections of books or whatever, and we can really do this nuanced stuff.
I think that there's probably no better way for us to accelerate our learning in these areas than by slipstreaming Mikey. And that has been my belief for years and years and years now. It's official. You're able to help out. You're able to get involved. You're able to benefit directly from liberating him from wage labor. Get on it right now. Do it. Just go. Stop what you're doing. Go click the button, subscribe. This is what you do. Subscribe to him. If you're already signed up for the ongoing Theory Underground seminars, then that's the ones that I do with my wife, Anne. Though that's getting an upgrade, which means that I will be doing one session per month that is just me, and then I will also be doing the ones with Anne, which are a crash course in sociology, anthropology, the social sciences, and ultimately Marx, Heidegger, Levinas, Bourdieu, imminently critiquing pop psychology, sociology, self-help, and ultimately the doxa of our time. But if you would like to be a subscriber to both Mikey's seminar and the seminar that the Snellgrove McKerrachers are doing, then the best way is to become a Tier 4 subscriber, or you can be a Tier 2 subscriber to each of us. The reason this matters is because Tier 2 is like pretty much the best bang for your buck. It gives you huge discounts on all of the courses that we do. But if you can't afford it, Tier 4 is amazing because it gives you Tier 3 access at both Mikey's seminar and ours.
And finally, not everybody has time to be part of these ongoing research seminars, and they just want to fund the paid content for the YouTube and podcast. And so thank you so much to our patrons over at Patreon. They're the ones funding all the free stuff. So big thank you to Bert, Marilyn, Carl, Sahil, Zozandra, Nikolai, Darian, Tyler, and Mandeep, and all the other wonderful patron people. Patreon people. And thank you to all the other wonderful Patreon people. Thank you so much to all of you patrons, and also to the special subscribers and the paying subscribers. Oh my god, it's just so awkward. Thank you, patrons. Okay. And to all the other wonderful patrons, thank you so much, all you patrons. And also a special thanks to the subscribers on the YouTube side, as well as the paying subscribers over at Substack. Why can't we do this? Fuck. You guys, just thank you. Thank you, everyone, for making this bullshit possible. Thank you to the subscribers. You did so good. Thanks, guys.